Well, I'm back in part 3, and today I will be working on the seagrass, sea oats, and I will be working somewhat on the dunes. I hope to finish this up in this third part, but my aim is to keep my videos shorter so that I don't lose your interest, and in the process I'm also speeding this up so that you don't get bored. The light changes that you will see are partly because the video is speeded up, and I am using daylight for this video presentation, so just bear with me. In this area, I'm going to be working a little more specifically on some details, because ultimately that is going to draw the eye to the center of the painting, and that's not a bad thing. I just need to make sure that it says what it is I think I'm trying to say here, and I will have other areas of interest, of course, to draw the eye into the rest of the painting. But that's the reason I am going to be centering on this section, because the water in the sections behind the sea oats are actually not going to be very visible. At this point, I'm beginning to go back to my seagrass. I established some minor places originally, but right now I'm taking my scruffy bristle brush and I'm rethinking where I want my seagrass to be. Note that I am using the corner of my bristle brush in addition to using the flat side of the brush, and in all of those situations I am not doing I'm not giving any pressure whatsoever to the brush, and I will ultimately go back over that again. I am using a considerable amount of liquid so that this will dry quickly and I can get right back to what I was doing. And the one reason that I'm not going to capitalize on the wet paint, which I do at some point when I'm working on the sea grasses, but I'm not going to capitalize on that wet paint this time, because I'm going back to work on my sand a little bit more before I establish my sea oats. That way my sand won't pick up that green paint. But I do this a little differently every time. It just depends on the mood I'm in or the way things are going at the time. But it is like everything else, it's personal preference. I am using a combination of burnt sienna, Prussian blue, and a little bit of cadmium yellow medium to make my green. I wanted it to be fairly dark, but still maintain the nice rich green color. Now that my seagrass is dried, I'm going to be working on the sand. I'm using a plaid one-stroke synthetic brush. It's called a number 12 flat, but that's 12 in other brushes would probably be larger, but it's about 3/4 of an inch wide, I guess, but it's soft and it works very well for what I'm going to be doing. And even though I want a soft brush to work on my sand, I'm going to have some areas that are going to be slightly scumbled over so that I have some texture remaining in my sand, but I'll show you that at the end of this part of the video. But I'm aiming in this part to add some color to my highlights. I'm using a little bit of burnt sienna in the beginning, and then later I will be adding some gray, very light gray. Then I'll be ready to work on my sea oats. And even after I have finished my sea oats, I will come back and do some brighter highlights. Now, when I'm finished with all of that, there is a great deal of information that I'm going to have to include around the base of the sea oats. I want to say a word about brushes. I don't like to spend a lot of money on brushes. There are times when more expensive brushes are necessary. I tend to buy a less expensive brush, and if it works for me, that's wonderful. I will usually wear it out. But if it doesn't work, I haven't lost a lot, so I just put it aside till I find some other reason to use it. Brushes are important because they help us to tell the story that we're trying to tell. And if we need a bristle brush, it's good that we have one. If we need one that is straggly, like I have used for my sea oats, and that's a worn out brush as a rule. They do make brushes that are more spread out. In fact, a fan brush will usually do a lot of what a worn out bristle brush would do. But even then, I find that the more worn out it is, the better it works for me. And in the case of liner brushes, the ones that I buy are relatively inexpensive. I have many of them, and I have the one which I'm going to be using for my sea oats, which I will identify again later, which has an extra long bristles, and it carries a lot of paint, and it's excellent for making the very long strokes that you need to make for sea oats. And it is a Princeton brush, and as I said, I'll be sharing that with you later when I start to use it. But you can use other things besides brushes. You can use your finger, you can use a cloth, you can use a paper towel, You can use sponges, you can use sponge brushes, you can use a palette knife, and there are many different types of palette knives on the market these days. And even with those, you don't have to spend a lot of money. They make plastic ones if you just want to experiment with a palette knife. So just don't fret over the cost of brushes. When you get to be a little bit more proficient with your paint, then you might want to invest in some better brushes. To keep this video from becoming too long, I'm going to be doing the seagrass and sea oats and the conclusion of the foreground in part 4. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in part 4. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you.